if not identical. We celebrate Veterans Day on the anniversary of the armistice that ended World War I. The armistice that began on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. And I wonder, in fact, if all Americans' prayers aren't the same as those I mentioned a moment ago. For all we can ever do for our heroes is remember them and remember what they did. And memories are transmitted through words. We see these soldiers in our mind as old and wise. We see them as something like the founding fathers, gray and gray-haired. But most of them were boys when they died, and they gave up two lives, the one they were living and the one they would have lived. When they died, they gave up their chance to be husbands and fathers and grandfathers. They gave up their chance to be revered old men. They gave up everything for our country, for us. And all we can do is remember. There's always someone who is remembering for us. No matter what time of year it is or what time of day, there are always people who come to this cemetery, leave a flag or a flower or a little rock on a headstone. And they stop and bow their heads and communicate what they wished to communicate. I think sometimes of General Matthew Ridgway, who the night before D-Day tossed sleepless on his cot and talked to the Lord and listened for the promise that God made to Joshua. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee. We're surrounded today by the debt of our wars. We owe them a debt we can never repay. All we can do is remember them and what they did and why they had to be brave for us. All we can do is try to see that other young men never have to join them. Today, as never before, we must pledge to remember the things that will continue the peace. Today, as never before, we must pray for God's help in broadening and deepening the peace we enjoy. Let us pray for freedom and justice in a more stable world. And let us make a compact today with the dead. A promise in the words for which General Ridgway listened. I will not fail thee, nor forsake thee.
Thank you. We have the lights. I'd like to take an opportunity to recognize those that have served or are currently serving in the United States Armed Forces. If that pertains to you, would you stand for just a moment? I'd like to give you all the round of applause and thank you for your service during that time. In this crowd of men and women that just stood, there are two very important and very special men that we'd like to recognize this morning. And I want to, as begin to read this, as these men hear their name called, perhaps maybe one of their family members would take the opportunity to escort them up here to the platform. And we'd like to recognize them here as the church bestow honor upon them for their service to our country. And so again, if you'll listen along as we read this. This is Adrian Corley was born on October the 8th, 1923 in Junior, West Virginia, to Russell and Rachel Corley. He had 2 sisters and 6 brothers. He was the 5th of 9 children. At the age of 19, Adrian enlisted in the United States Marine Corps so that he and his brother Ken could serve together in the same unit. From 1942 to 1945, Adrian served his country proudly on the island of Guam in the South Pacific during World War II. In 1952, Adrian moved to Ohio where he met Donna Stenney at the Cleveland Baptist Temple. They were married on September the 5th, 1964. They had 3 children, Mark, Leslie, and Aaron. Adrian worked at Phoenix Dye until he retired in 1988. He and Donna served at Cleveland Baptist Temple from the early 60s until 1994. In 1994, Adrian and Donna's joined the Cleveland Baptist Church. Donna's passed away on July 5th, 1999, but Adrian has continued to be a faithful member here. Adrian and Donna's reared their children in church, and they were under the preaching of the gospel. Because of this, Adrian has seen his children embrace the faith and pass it down to their children. The Lord has blessed Adrian with 7 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. At 91 years of age, Adrian is still a loving father and grandfather, a blessing to his friends and church family, and an incredible testimony to all who see and know him. Berl Grimm was born on November the 6th, 1923 in Perez, West Virginia. He was a middle child out of 11 children. Always concerned about his family, he wanted his younger brothers to be able to go to high school. This meant that they would have to board with the family, and money was needed for that. His mother, even though he was not old enough, signed papers for him to join the Civilian Conservation Corps, commonly known as CC Camps. He was immediately sent to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming, where he did many odd jobs. Eventually, his job was hauling gravel in a dump truck to build roads. Most of his pay was sent to his family. After the CC camps closed in 1942, Berl went home for a year and then joined the United States Navy, receiving his training at the Great Lakes Naval Station in Chicago, Illinois. He served from February 21st, 1943 to January 21st, 1946 as part of the little-known U.S. Navy Armed Guards. Their job was to protect the merchant marine Liberty ships which were carrying ammunition, prisoners, and supplies to and from England. He manned the largest guns on these ships and had to fire on a number of different occasions a gun that would shoot a 58-pound shell up to 10 miles away. The recoil was so bad that things would fall off tables, bunks, etc. when shot. Berl made 5 trips across the Atlantic Ocean and 1 trip to the Pacific Ocean. Berl could have lost his life a number of times, including seeing 5 or 6 ships in front of him being sunk, but God spared him for a purpose. Following his tour of duty in the Navy, he met his wife Mildred while working in Leatherwood, Kentucky. From Kentucky, he came to Cleveland in 1950, but returned to Leatherwood to marry Mildred on December 23, 1950. Berl and Mildred were married for 63 years before she passed away on January 12th of this year. As her health decreased, he exercised daily so he could keep up his strength and take care of her in the home for over 10 years. It broke his heart to have to put her in a nursing home for the last year of her life. Berl has 3 children, Patty Marks, Donna Adamwich, and Kevin Grimm. He has 8 grandchildren and 13 great-grandchildren. He loves his family dearly. He and his family started attending Cleveland Baptist Church in September of 1958 after Dr. Roy Thompson knocked on their door and invited them. Berl and Patty were saved at the old theater building. Mildred was already saved. He served as head usher for 30 years until he needed to be home with Mildred. He worked hard on the railroad and in the salt mines and always cared for his family. He still exercises daily and just turned 91 this past week. On this Sunday, prior to Veterans Day, Cleveland Baptist Church wishes to honor Mr. Adrian and Mr. Berl Grimm for their heroic sacrifices for our country while serving in the Marine Corps and the Navy during World War II. This generation of men and women that served in the military has become known as the greatest generation, and we would like them to know how grateful we are for their sacrifice. Mr. Corley and Mr. Grimm, thank you for your service to our country. We honor you today for your commitment and sacrifice.
If you just come over here for just a second, both of you, if you would, sir. I got to tell you, you are looking at literal heroes in our nation. These gentlemen and others, as this generation is slowly passing off the scene, these folks paid a tremendous price for us to have the freedoms that we have here today. And we're grateful for those who are still in military service. There's still a great call and duty. But let's thank them once again for their commitment to our country, for their willingness to serve during World War II, and for the fact that both of them have been such great testimonies of Christ here at the Cleveland Baptist Church. God bless you.
Thank you. You may be seated. I'd like to invite the ushers to come at this time and prepare to receive the morning offering.